Hello, welcome back to my channel. Tonight we're diving deep into Stranger Things. Season 5, Volume 2, breaking down episodes 5 through 7 and theorizing about what's going to happen in the finale. I'll be covering all the major revelations, character moments, and everything that went down in these absolutely insane episodes, plus my predictions for how the series actually ends. There's definitely loads to get through, so let's get started. We'll start with a quick recap of where Volume 1 left off, just to get everyone on the same page. Then we'll move on to Episode 5, which is called Shock Jock, and covers all the immediate aftermath of Vecna's child abduction plan, Will's guilt about his powers, and that absolutely mental hospital attack with the Demodogs. After that, we'll dive into Episode 6, Escape from Camazotz, which honestly might be the most important episode for understanding what the Upside Down actually is. We'll also cover Episode 7, The Bridge, where everything comes together for the final showdown. And then, since the finale hasn't aired yet, we'll get into theories about how it's all going to end, who might die, and what the very last scene of Stranger Things will be. There's plenty to get talking about, but if you like what I do here and want a way to support the channel, consider hitting the subscribe button down below. It genuinely helps loads, and it means I can keep making these deep dives into all the shows and lore that we're obsessed with. But for now, let's get into it. Grab your Eggo waffles and your walkie-talkie, get cozy on the couch with your blanket, and let's dive into the Upside Down one more time. So before we dive into Volume 2, let's quickly recap where things left off at the end of Episode 4, because honestly, there was a lot happening, and it all sets up what comes next. The big moment at the end of Volume 1 was Will finally tapping into his powers. He's been connected to Vecna since Season 1. Since that very first night, he vanished on November 6th, 1983. And throughout Season 5, he's been feeling this sort of siphoning connection, where he can sense what Vecna's doing and feeling. But in Episode 4, titled The Sorcerer, Will actually uses that connection. When the gang is surrounded by Demogorgons, and it looks like they're absolutely done for, Will reaches into Vecna's mind and takes control of the creatures, saving everyone. It's this massive moment where he goes from being the victim, the one who's always been possessed or manipulated, to actually having agency and power. The problem is, Will feels awful about it. He knows Vecna was using him as a spy throughout the episode, seeing through his eyes, and Will blames himself for not acting sooner. Because while all this was happening, Vecna successfully abducted 11 other children from Hawkins. We'd already seen him take Holly Wheeler, Nancy's little sister, earlier in the volume, but now he's got 12 kids total. According to what we learn, Vecna needs exactly 12 children, because they're what he calls perfect vessels. Kids are easier to manipulate and control than adults, and he plans to use them to amplify his power for this insane plan to merge dimensions. Meanwhile, Max and Holly are trapped inside Vecna's mindscape. They're in this twisted version of the Creel house, where Vecna, disguised as this friendly figure the kids call Mr. Whatsit, is manipulating all the children into thinking he's saving them. Max, who's been in Vecna's mind before, back in Season 4, knows it's all rubbish, and she's trying to help Holly escape. But it's not easy because the other kids are fully under his control. And then in the Upside Down, Eleven, Hopper, and Carly finally reunite. Carly, also known as 8, is Eleven's sister from Brenner's lab experiments, and she's been held captive by this woman called Dr. K. Eleven and Hopper manage to find her, and they're planning to use Carly's illusion powers to help take down Vecna. It's a proper reunion, but there's no time to celebrate because everything's going to hell. The military is still hunting 11, Hawkins is under full quarantine, and there's this sense that time is running out. Lucas figures out that November 6th is significant. It's the anniversary of Will's disappearance, and he thinks that's when Vecna plans to complete his merge of dimensions. With all that in mind, that's where we were when Volume 1 ended. Now, Episode 5 picks up right where we left off, and things get even more intense. Now, Episode 5, titled Shock Jock, wastes absolutely no time throwing us back into the chaos. The episode opens literally moments after episode 4 ended, with Will standing there watching as helicopters close in, and those 11 children get dragged away by Vecna's creatures. You can see the guilt all over his face. Joyce and Mike find Will in the aftermath, and they've got to run immediately because military helicopters are searching for them. The government's still hunting 11, and by extension, anyone associated with her. So they're fleeing through the tunnels under Hawkins, the same tunnels Will helped build back when he was possessed in Season 2, which just adds another layer of trauma to the whole thing. While they're escaping, they find Lucas, who's been injured by a Demogorgon. He's in rough shape, but they manage to get him stabilized. Once he's able to talk, Lucas tries to lighten the mood by calling Will the Wise, like his Dungeons and Dragons character. But Will pushes back against that. He doesn't see what's happening to him as real power or wisdom. He's siphoning abilities from Vecna, not generating his own magic. And that distinction really matters to him. He feels like a puppet, not a sorcerer, even though everyone else is treating him like he's this powerful new asset to the team. What's really interesting is how Will explains his powers work. Unlike 11, who has her own psychic abilities that she generates herself, Will is basically just a conduit. Vecna's had a connection to him since 1983, and that connection goes both ways. Vecna can see through Will's eyes and use him as a spy, but Will can also tap into Vecna's power if he concentrates hard enough. It's not comfortable, and it's not something Will wants, but it's what they've got. Meanwhile, we cut to 11, Hopper and Carly in the Upside Down. This is where we get loads of backstory about Carly that connects to Season 2, Episode 8, The Lost Sister, which honestly a lot of people skipped, but it's actually relevant now. Carly reveals that she knew Henry Creel back when they were both subjects in Brenner's lab. She had no idea he was still alive, or that he'd become Vecna, this monstrous entity trying to destroy the world. Carly's powers are different from 11's and Henry's. Instead of telekinesis or mind control, she creates illusions. She can make people see things that aren't really there, which is going to be crucial for the plan they're forming. They're also dealing with Dr. K, this new antagonist who's been experimenting on Carly. Dr. K works for some shadowy government division, and she's trying to understand and weaponize the children from Brenner's program. Carly uses her illusion powers to create a decoy version of herself, basically a smokescreen, and they manage to escape. Carly had been held captive and experimented on by Dr. K. The Duffers have said Carly's return was a secret they protected throughout filming. It's a tense sequence, but it also shows how powerful Carly can be when she's working with people who actually care about her instead of treating her like a lab rat. Now let's talk about what's happening inside Vecna's mind with Max and Holly, because this is where things get properly dark. The children are all gathered at the Creel house, sitting around this dining table, and Vecna's taken on the persona of Mr. Whatsit, this friendly, grandfatherly figure. He's telling them that they're in a safe place, a place with no monsters, and that he needs their help to save the world. It's classic manipulation, framing his evil plan as heroism. Henry explains to the kids that he needs to merge Hawkins with something called the Abyss, which we later learn is also called Dimension X. This is a realm beyond the Upside Down, something even more dangerous and primordial. To pull off this merge, he needs a tremendous amount of energy, and that's where the 12 children come in. He's going to channel their minds, use them as vessels to amplify his power. Children are easier to shape and control than adults, and their minds are more pliable, which makes them perfect for what he's planning. Henry frames it all as a last resort to save the world from some greater threat, but Max knows it's rubbish. She's been in his mind before, she's seen his memories, and she knows he's lying. But the other kids, including Derek, Holly's friend, are buying into it completely. They genuinely believe Mr. Whatsit is their saviour. Holly's struggling. She's just a kid, probably 9 or 10 years old, and she's been ripped away from her family, manipulated and surrounded by other children who think she's wrong to resist. It's heartbreaking to watch because you can see her trying to hold on to the truth, while everyone around her is telling her she's the one who's confused. Back in the real world, Max's comatose body remains at Hawkins Memorial Hospital. Remember, Max has been in a coma since the end of Season 4, when Vecna nearly killed her. Her mind has been trapped in Vecna's consciousness, but her body is still in Hawkins, vulnerable and hooked up to life support. Lucas stays by her bedside constantly, refusing to leave her side. Meanwhile, inside Vecna's mind, things are reaching a crisis point. Vecna is strangling Max's consciousness, trying to kill her permanently so she can never escape. It's a brutal assault, and Max is losing the fight. But then there's this pivotal moment where Will helps Max and Holly from the outside. Will uses his connection to Vecna to actually enter Vecna's mind and temporarily take over his body. It's this incredible display of Will's growing power and confidence. He's not just passively connected to Vecna anymore, he's actively fighting back, using that connection as a weapon. Will's intervention stops Vecna from strangling Max's consciousness and prevents him from recapturing Holly. It's a crucial turning point that shows Will's transformation from victim to hero. By the end of episode 5, Vecna's plan is becoming clearer. He's already halfway through the process of merging Dimension X with Hawkins. The abyss is descending toward their world, and if it makes contact, everything's going to change. The episode ends with this sense of dread because our heroes are scattered. They're being hunted, and Vecna's got 12 children under his control with time running out. So by the end of episode 5, the stakes couldn't be higher, and you're left wondering how they're possibly going to stop this. Let's talk about Episode 6, Escape from Camazotz, which honestly might be one of the most important episodes in the entire series, for understanding what the Upside Down actually is and how Vecna's plan works. First off, the title itself is a reference to A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. Camazotz is this planet in the book where everyone's minds are controlled by this evil force, and individuality is basically crushed. It's a perfect metaphor for what Vecna's doing with the children, trapping them in this false reality where they're all conforming to his vision. Pretty clever reference, honestly. Episode 6 picks up with Max and Holly still trapped in Vecna's mindscape, and things are getting worse. The other children are fully under Henry's control at this point, completely brainwashed into thinking he's their saviour. Derek, Holly's friend, who seemed like he might resist, has completely flipped sides. He's now one of the most vocal in trying to convince Holly to trust Mr. Whatsit. Max is doing her best to help Holly stay strong and resist the manipulation. She's been through this before. She knows how Vecna works, and she's trying to teach Holly how to hold on to herself. There's this really touching moment where Max tells Holly about her Dungeons and Dragons token, this little figurine called Holly the Heroic. It's not just a toy, it represents who Holly really is, her true self, beneath all the fear and confusion. Max explains that Holly needs to find her own way back to her body, and that connection to her real identity is what's going to save her. The escape attempt is intense. Max and Holly make a run for it, trying to find portals back to the real world through Vecna's memories. They end up in this traumatic cave memory, and this is where we get a huge reveal about Vecna's origin. We see a young Henry Creel in Rachel, Nevada, encountering a Russian spy who's holding a briefcase with stolen military technology inside. The spy shoots Henry in the hand, but Henry fights back and kills him with a rock in self-defense. Max pulls Holly away before they can see what's inside the briefcase. The show deliberately doesn't reveal the contents. However, the first shadow stage play fills in the gaps. The briefcase contained technology connected to Dimension X, and when Henry opened it, he was exposed to mind flayer particles that infected him and gave him his powers. What's really interesting is that this completely recontextualizes everything we thought we knew about Vecna. He's not some all-powerful creator god of the Upside Down. He's basically a kid who found something he shouldn't have, got corrupted by it, and then convinced himself he was meant to use it to reshape the world. Meanwhile, back in the real world, we get the biggest mythology reveal of the entire series. Dustin, being the brilliant nerd that he is, finally explains what the Upside Down actually is. It's not a separate dimension. It's a wormhole, the walls that everyone's been trying to break through, the barriers between dimensions. Those are the edges of the wormhole itself. When you breach those walls, everything inside gets sucked out like a vacuum. We actually see this happen on a small scale when Hopper, Eleven and Carly help the latter escape from Dr. K. They break through a barrier and there's this intense suction force pulling at them. This means the Upside Down has basically been a passage or a bridge this whole time. It's not the main threat. The real danger is Dimension X, the Abyss, which is on the other side of the wormhole. That's where the true evil lives. That's what Vecna's trying to pull through into Hawkins. It's such a clever twist because it reframes everything. All those times characters have been exploring the Upside Down. They've been walking through the tunnel, not the destination, and the fact that the Upside Down is frozen on November 6th, 1983, the day Will vanished and 11 first opened the gate, that's not a coincidence. That's when the wormhole was created. Time stopped inside it because it's not a real place. It's a space between places. I love that the Duffer Brothers set this up so carefully. Looking back at previous seasons with this knowledge, you can see the hints. The way the Upside Down is a mirror of Hawkins but wrong, the way it doesn't change or age, the way creatures can pass through it. It's been a doorway all along. Now let's talk about Steve and Dustin because their subplot in this episode is really important. Their friendship has been strained all season due to Dustin's grief over Eddie's death, and it finally exploded in episode 5. The fight took place in Hawkins' lab in the Upside Down, triggered when Steve said Eddie made a dumb call and got himself killed. Dustin snapped, and they got into an actual physical brawl. It was a brutal scene that put their friendship on the brink of collapse. They reconcile in episode 6, though, when they need to help Nancy and Jonathan, who are in trouble at the Hawkins lab in the Upside Down. Steve and Dustin need to break in and help them. Nancy had shot at this weird force field on the roof of the lab, and they've been investigating what's underneath. Steve and Dustin manage to break through and reach them, and this is when they discover that the sensory deprivation tank in the Upside Down version of the lab still works. That's going to be crucial for Eleven's plan. She can use it to go deep into Vecna's mind, deeper than she could without it, and that's where the final confrontation is going to happen. The episode also gives us more information about Kate Bush's running up that hill and its role in Max's story. Back in season 4, it seemed like the song itself had some magical power to save Max from Vecna's curse. But episode 6 reveals that it was never about the song specifically. It was about what the song represented, the connection to everything Max loved, to Lucas, to her friends, to her life. That emotional tether is what gave her the strength to fight back and escape. The song was just the anchor for those feelings. This is important because it means Max could have escaped Vecna's control earlier if she'd realised it wasn't about the music. It was always about love and connection. That's the real power that fights against Vecna's isolation and despair. Back in the real world, things get absolutely mental at Hawkins Memorial Hospital. Vecna's been using Will as an unwitting spy, which means he knows where Max's comatose body is being kept. Max has been in a coma since the end of season 4, her body lying vulnerable in the hospital while her consciousness has been trapped in Vecna's mind. Vecna sends a pack of demodogs to attack the hospital. The plan is simple and brutal. If Max's physical body dies, her consciousness will be stuck in his mind forever, and Holly will be completely alone, which will make her easier to control. It's a psychological attack as much as a physical one. The hospital sequence is intense. Lucas is there at Max's bedside, and so are Robin and her girlfriend Vicky. Lucas has Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill playing on a cassette player by Max's bed. He believes the song is what's guiding Max's consciousness, helping her find her way back to her body. But when the demodogs arrive, the sound also attracts them. They're hunting through the hospital, sniffing around, getting closer to Max's room. Robin and Vicky are trying to help, hiding and attempting to distract the creatures. Vicky initially didn't believe Robin's stories about the Upside Down and thought she was on drugs. She only started believing when the Demodogs actually arrived. The whole sequence is very reminiscent of the Velociraptor kitchen scene from Jurassic Park, honestly. The Demodogs are getting closer and closer, and you genuinely don't know if they're going to reach Max's vulnerable body in time. And then Karen Wheeler, of all people, becomes the hero of the moment. Nancy and Mike's mum, who's been pretty much a background character for most of the series, saves the day. Despite still recovering from her injuries from the Demogorgon attack at her home earlier in the season, Karen drags herself out of her hospital bed when she hears the Demodogs are coming for Max. She kills them by placing an oxygen tank in an industrial dryer, creating an explosion that takes out the creatures. Mums can be terrifying when their kids and their town are threatened, apparently. The Demodogs are defeated, and Max's body remains safe. Lucas can keep playing the song, keep calling out to Max's consciousness, hoping she'll find her way home. There's also this subplot with Erica, Mr. Clark and Murray working on their telemetry project. They're conducting a balloon experiment near the school, trying to pinpoint locations in the Upside Down from the real world. They successfully locate Dustin, which is crucial because it means they can coordinate between the two groups. Erica uses her walkie-talkie to inform Lucas at the hospital, and this becomes the communication link that helps everyone plan their next moves. The mythology reveals in this episode are massive. We learn that everything the characters have assumed about the Upside Down since Season 1 has been wrong. It's not a parallel dimension, it's a wormhole. Vecna didn't create it, he found it. The Mind Flayer might actually be the real evil, not Vecna. Vecna could just be another puppet, someone who thought he was in control, but was actually being manipulated by something older and more powerful. The Duffer Brothers have hinted that the finale will reveal who the real evil is, Vecna or the Mind Flayer, and Episode 6 sets that up perfectly. The fact that the first Shadow play shows the Mind Flayer influencing young Henry to accept his dark side suggests that Vecna was never fully in charge. He's been a tool for something else this whole time. The episode ends with Max and Holly both making their desperate escape attempts. They're running toward portals back to the real world, and Episode 6 ends on this massive cliffhanger. We see them running, we see the portals ahead, but we don't know if they make it. That's where the episode cuts off, leaving us in suspense until Episode 7. So Episode 7, called The Bridge, brings everyone back together and sets up what's going to be an absolutely insane finale. The episode opens with Max waking up in the hospital, and it's genuinely one of the most emotional scenes in Volume 2. She's been in a coma since the end of Season 4, her consciousness trapped in Vecna's mind, and now she's finally back in her own body. Max managed to escape back to her real body at the end of Episode 6, and the reunion with Lucas is everything you'd want it to be. She wakes up after being in a coma for so long, and Lucas is there, and they just hold each other. Sadie Sink and Caleb McLaughlin absolutely nail this scene. There's barely any dialogue at first. It's just pure emotion, relief, grief, love, all of it pouring out. Critics have called it the strongest performance of the season, and honestly, I'd agree. There are tears, there's relief, and there's this overwhelming sense of, we actually made it through this. But the celebration is short-lived, because Holly's still missing, and Vecna's plan is still in motion. But Holly doesn't make it back. That's the heartbreaking part. She was running toward her portal at the end of Episode 6, but in Episode 7 we see what actually happened. She briefly escapes into the Upside Down, but then suddenly starts falling through the upside down sky, screaming for help. Vecna catches her midair and pulls her back to his fortress. Nancy hears her voice and recognizes it, which sets up Nancy's motivation for the finale. She's going to save her little sister, no matter what. Holly crashes down into the sticky vines where Will was held back in Season 1. It's a direct visual callback, showing that Holly's now in the same position Will was in all those years ago. She manages to free herself from the vines, pulling them off and vomiting up this disgusting, upside-down bile, which is just horrific to watch. She thinks she's escaped, but she hasn't. She's still trapped in the upside down, and Vecna recaptures her. He brings her back to the Creel house, and this is where things get really disturbing. The other children have gone full Children of the Corn at this point. When Holly gets back, Mr. Whatsit feeds them this whole story about how Max is an evil monster who filled Holly's head with lies and corrupted her, and the kids believe him completely. They start chanting, back to the light, like they're in some kind of cult. Then the children storm into Holly's bedroom to talk sense into her, to bring her back into the fold, and when Holly resists, things turn violent. She actually bludgeons one of them with a Barbie radio trying to defend herself, and the kids call her a bitch and throw her down the stairs. Some sources indicate they kick her rather than throw her, though the scene is brutal either way. I'm sorry, but what in Whitney Houston's name is going on at the Creel house? These are children. They've been so thoroughly manipulated that they're willing to hurt another kid to enforce conformity. It's genuinely one of the darkest things Stranger Things has done, and that's saying something. 11, Hopper, and Coley arrive at the hospital not long after Max wakes up. It's the first time in ages that most of the group has been in the same place at the same time, which is a relief after all the scattered storylines. But there's no time to properly catch up. Max immediately starts explaining what she learned while she was inside Vecna's mind. She confirms that Vecna wants to merge Hawkins with the Abyss, remaking the world entirely. Will adds to this, explaining the mechanics of how Vecna plans to use the children as vessels to amplify his power. Lucas's theory about November 6th being significant turns out to be right. That's the deadline. Vecna's going to complete the merge tonight, on the anniversary of Will's disappearance. It's this perfect full circle moment that makes narrative sense, but also fills everyone with dread because they're running out of time. Meanwhile, Holly's situation at the Creel house continues to deteriorate. Henry tells the remaining children that they need Holly on their side if they want to save the world tonight. So Derek and the others continue trying to convince her to trust Mr. Whatsit again. It's manipulative and heartbreaking because these kids genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. Now let's talk about the planning session, because this is where the gang finally comes up with their strategy. Hopper throws out the first idea, which is to fly a helicopter directly into the Abyss and blow it up from the inside. It's a very Hopper plan, honestly. Bold, direct, and slightly mental. Nobody agrees with it, though, and they start arguing about what to do instead. Steve hears something during the argument, some detail that sparks an idea, and he cuts in with what he calls the beanstalk plan. The idea is this: they wait until the Abyss gets close enough to Hawkins, then they climb up into it using the radio tower, the same tower that Steve and Jonathan raced to climb in the premiere episode, which at the time seemed like just a character moment, but now it pays off. Once they're inside the Abyss, they plant the bomb and destroy Dimension X from within, stopping the merge and killing Vecna in the process. It's a deceptively simple plan, but as Dustin points out, the timing has to be absolutely perfect. They need to wait until the dimensions are close enough to climb between them, but not so close that the merge becomes irreversible. And while the physical team is climbing the tower and planting the bomb, 11 needs to be in Vecna's mind, weakening him and keeping him distracted. That's where the sensory deprivation tank comes in. 11 will use the tank in the Upside Down's Hawkins lab to go deep into Vecna's consciousness. Kaylee will help by creating illusions to confuse and disorient Vecna. Will's going to use his connection to siphon off some of Vecna's power, weakening him further. And Max, even though she's just woken up from a coma, offers to help from the real world, using her experience inside Vecna's mind to guide them. The plan requires almost everyone to go into the Upside Down. Elle, Hopper, Nancy, Jonathan, Murray, Steve, Mike, Lucas, Robin, Dustin, Will and Kaylee all head down through one of the gates. That's a proper massive team. Meanwhile, Joyce, Max, Erica, Mr. Clark and Vicky stay above ground to coordinate and provide support. But before they head into the Upside Down, there's a scene that Stranger Things fans have been waiting for since season 1. Will gathers everyone together and comes out. He tells them he doesn't like girls, and he explains that Vecna showed him a vision of a future where he opens up about his identity only to watch his friends and family slowly drift away from him. It's his deepest fear that being himself will cost him the people he loves. The group's response is everything it should be. They immediately reassure Will that they love him, that nothing's going to change, that he's always been one of them and always will be. There's a group hug, and there are lots of tears. Noah Schnapp has talked about how this scene isn't just about Will being gay, it's about the identity crisis that everyone faces at some point. The fear that if people really knew you, they wouldn't accept you. It's a universal feeling wrapped in a specifically queer experience. Joyce has this beautiful moment where she loosens her protective grip on Will. Throughout the series, she's been this fiercely protective mother, constantly trying to shield Will from danger. But here, she accepts that Will doesn't need protecting anymore. He needs to be trusted, to be allowed to fight, to make his own choices. Will volunteers to help Eleven and Carly stop Vecna, and Joyce lets him. The infiltration of the Upside Down is tense. They have to get through the Mac Z gate, which is heavily guarded by military forces. Carly uses her illusion powers to help them slip past, creating distractions and false images that confuse the soldiers. It's a small but important hurdle, and the fact that the whole party makes it through intact is a relief. Nobody dies here, which honestly I was worried about. Once they're in the Upside Down, they make their way to Hawkins' lab. The plan is set. 11 will enter the sensory deprivation tank and go into Vecna's mind. When he's weakened enough, Steve's team will climb the radio tower, enter the abyss, plant the bomb, and get out before it explodes. In theory, this kills Vecna, destroys Dimension X, and seals the Upside Down permanently. But then Carly drops this bombshell. She pulls 11 aside and suggests that 11 should stay in the Upside Down when it explodes. It's the only way to be absolutely certain that Vecna dies and can never come back. 11 would have to sacrifice herself. The look between 11 and Carly is loaded with meaning. Ross Duffer described it as a sense of dread or uncertainty. We don't know if 11 agrees to this plan or not. The episode deliberately leaves it ambiguous, but the fact that it's even on the table casts this shadow over everything. Even if they win, what's the cost going to be? The final scene of Volume 2 goes back to the Creel house. The children are gathered around the dining room table, with Holly among them now. She's got a gash on her head from her fall, and she looks exhausted and scared. Henry sits at the head of the table like he's presiding over some twisted family dinner. He lights candles, tells them it's time, and they all hold hands. As a clock chimes in the background, marking the hour, Henry enters each child's mind simultaneously. You can see their eyes glaze over as he takes control. The ritual has begun. November 6th, 1987. The merge is starting, and that's where Volume 2 ends, with our heroes preparing for their assault on Vecna, and Vecna beginning his ritual to merge the dimensions. Everything's been building to this, and the finale is going to be massive. Now, before we dive into theories about the finale, I need to be upfront with you. The finale doesn't air until tomorrow, December 31st. So everything from here on is educated guesswork based on what we know and what the Duffer brothers have hinted at in interviews. I'm not claiming to have insider knowledge or anything like that. This is just me theorizing based on the setup. What we do know for certain is actually pretty limited. The finale is episode 8, titled The Right Side Up, which is obviously a mirror of the Upside Down and suggests some kind of restoration or reversal. According to reports, the runtime is feature-length, apparently over 2 hours, which makes it one of the longest episodes Netflix has ever produced. And in a pretty cool move, it's getting a simultaneous theatrical release alongside the streaming premiere. Select theatres in the US and Canada are showing it on December 31st at the same time it drops on Netflix, which is the first time Netflix has done this for a series finale. That's how big this is. The entire episode takes place on November 6th, 1987, the anniversary of Will's original disappearance back in 1983. That's a proper full circle moment for the series. Everything started on that date, and everything's going to end on that date 4 years later. The Duffer Brothers have been dropping hints about what's coming, and some of them are pretty intriguing. Matt Duffer said the finale will reveal what the Upside Down really is, which suggests there's still more to learn even after Episode 6's wormhole revelation. Ross Duffer mentioned the question of the real evil, whether it's Vecna or the Mind Flayer, implying there's going to be a twist about who's actually been in control this whole time. Noah Schnapp compared Will and Vecna's relationship to Harry Potter and Voldemort, saying those parallels would be shown more throughout the season, which suggests Will's connection to Vecna is going to be crucial to the ending. Matt also said that Mike becomes the leader again, but in a more confident and mature version than in Season 1, so expect Mike to orchestrate the final plan somehow. And both Duffers have described the finale as the most emotional episode they've written, with the quote, "There wasn't a dry eye on set," being thrown around loads. In terms of what Volume 2 set up structurally, we've got the party split between the Upside Down and the real world. Eleven's potential sacrifice has been heavily foreshadowed with that conversation with Carly. Will's powers are going to be crucial to victory. Max is safe, but still vulnerable. Holly and 11 other children are under Vecna's control. Dimension X is actively descending toward Hawkins. The bomb is ready to destroy the Abyss. The radio tower climb is planned. And November 6th is the deadline, which is basically now. When you look at Stranger Things as a whole, there are patterns we can expect. The show loves full circle moments. It started with Will's disappearance on November 6th, 1983, and it's almost certainly going to end on November 6th, 1987. It's always been about found family and the power of connection, so you can bet that the characters' bonds are going to be their greatest weapon against Vecna's isolation and despair. 11 has a history of self-sacrifice, nearly dying to close the gate in Season 3 and pushing herself to the brink, bringing Max back in Season 4. So the question is whether Vecna will force her to make that choice again. There are narrative constraints the finale has to satisfy. It needs to defeat Vecna permanently, rescue those 12 children, close the Upside Down threat forever, resolve 11's story arc, resolve Will's arc, since he's been connected to Vecna since the very beginning, address Mike's leadership development, explain the true nature of the Upside Down and the Mind Flayer's role, and provide a satisfying emotional ending for characters we've been following for 9 years. That's a lot to accomplish in one episode, even a feature-length one. But if anyone can pull it off, it's the Duffer Brothers. With all that in mind, let's get into the actual theories. Let's start with the most obvious question. How does Vecna actually die? The setup from Volume 2 gives us a pretty clear framework. 11's going to be in the sensory deprivation tank, entering Vecna's mind. Carly and Will are assisting her, using illusions and siphoned power to weaken him. Meanwhile, Steve's team climbs the radio tower, enters Dimension X, and plants a bomb to destroy the Abyss physically. But I think there's more to it than just that straightforward plan, because Stranger Things rarely gives us exactly what we expect. My first theory is that there's going to be a massive mental battle, similar to what we saw at the end of Season 4, but way more intense. 11 confronts Vecna in the mindscape, but this time she's not alone. Carly's creating illusions to confuse and disorient him, making him see things that aren't there, questioning his own perception of reality. That's brilliant, actually, because Vecna's whole thing is trapping people in their worst memories and fears. Having Carly turn that back on him, making him doubt what's real, would be perfect poetic justice. Will's role is crucial here. He uses his connection to Vecna to siphon power away, basically draining Vecna's strength while 11 attacks. And Max, even though she's in the real world, might help by using her experience inside Vecna's mind to guide them. She knows his memories, his weak points, the places where his control is shakiest. The children's minds are the battleground, and our heroes are fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously. But here's the thing, I don't think you can kill Vecna through mental combat alone. He's too powerful, and his physical body in the Upside Down is basically indestructible at this point. You'd need to destroy him mentally and physically at the exact same time, which is where the bomb comes in. The timing has to be absolutely perfect. 11 weakens Vecna mentally, holding him in place, while Steve's team climbs into Dimension X and plants the bomb. When Vecna is at his weakest, when he's distracted by the mental assault and can't defend himself, that's when the bomb goes off. The explosion destroys his physical form, while 11 crushes his consciousness. Double kill. No coming back from that. What's interesting about the children's role is that they're not just victims. Holly's going to be key to freeing them. She's resisted Vecna's control longer than anyone, and she knows it's all manipulation. If she can break through to even one or two of the other kids, get them to question Mr. Whatsit's lies, it could start a chain reaction. Derek might be the first to flip, actually, since he was Holly's friend before all this. Imagine if the children's combined resistance overloads Vecna's control. He's using them as vessels to amplify his power. But what if they all simultaneously reject him? It would backfire spectacularly. Instead of making him stronger, it would fracture his concentration, leaving him vulnerable at exactly the wrong moment. That's the kind of ironic defeat that would fit Stranger Things perfectly. Will's crucial moment is what I'm most interested in, though. He's been connected to Vecna since November 6, 1983. That's 4 years of this parasitic link, 4 years of feeling Vecna in the back of his mind. The Duffer Brothers have compared them to Harry Potter and Voldemort, but I think the parallel goes deeper than people realise. What if Will doesn't just sever the connection? What if he has to sacrifice it, meaning he loses something in the process? Maybe cutting the link costs Will his memories of those years. Maybe it damages his psyche permanently. Maybe it's physically painful in a way that scars him. The point is, freedom might not be free. Will might have to give something up to truly be rid of Vecna, and that would be properly tragic, but also cathartic. He's been suffering for so long. The idea that he'd willingly endure more pain to save everyone feels very much in character. Now here's where things get complicated. The Mind Flayer question. The Duffers asked in interviews, who's the real evil, Vecna or the Mind Flayer? And the first shadow play strongly suggests that the Mind Flayer influenced Henry when he was young, pushing him toward darkness. What if Vecna was never truly in control? What if he's been a puppet this whole time, and killing him doesn't actually end the threat? That would be a massive twist. Our heroes think they've won. Vecna's dead. Dimension X is destroyed. Everyone's celebrating. But then we see something in the Upside Down. The Mind Flayer is still there. It's weakened maybe, or dormant, but it's not dead. Vecna was just its tool, its way of interacting with our world. The real threat was always something older, something more primordial. To be honest, I think the finale's going to be a combination of all these elements. 11, Carly and Will launch a mental assault. The children break free from inside, causing Vecna's power to destabilize. Steve's team plants the bomb and destroys Dimension X physically. But the twist is that the Mind Flayer is revealed as the true evil, the original source of all this corruption. Vecna dies, but the bigger picture emerges. The Upside Down needs to be sealed forever, not just because of Vecna, but because of what created Vecna in the first place. That would explain why the Duffers have been so cagey about the ending. It's not just about defeating one villain, it's about understanding the entire mythology and making sure this threat can never return. But honestly, Vecna's death is only part of the equation. The bigger question that's been hanging over Volume 2 is, who's going to sacrifice themselves? Volume 2 basically set this up as inevitable. Carly's conversation with 11, where she suggests 11 should stay in the Upside Down when it explodes, was such an obvious piece of foreshadowing that it almost feels too obvious. And that's what makes me suspicious. The thing about 11 potentially dying is that we've been here before. Multiple times, actually. Season 1 ended with 11 seemingly dying when she destroyed the Demogorgon and closed the gate. She vanished, everyone thought she was gone, and then she came back. Season 3 had her lose her powers, and nearly sacrifice herself to close the Mind Flayer's gate at Starcourt Mall. Season 4 saw her push herself to the absolute brink, bringing Max back from Vecna's curse. At this point, 11 almost dying is basically a tradition. The show's been teasing her death for so long that it's become expected, and the Duffer Brothers know we expect it. They're not stupid. So why would they telegraph it so obviously in Volume 2 unless it's misdirection? Millie Bobby Brown said in interviews that 11 is so locked in this season that she has a goal and a mission in mind, and we should root for her like we've been doing for the last 10 years, but this time for one last adventure. That doesn't sound like someone describing a character who's about to die tragically. It sounds like someone describing a character who's going to triumph. Plus, thematically, it would be really dark to have 11 sacrifice herself after everything she's been through. Stranger Things is fundamentally a show about found family and hope. Having the girl who was treated like a weapon her entire childhood die saving the world feels like it's saying she was always just a weapon. That goes against everything the show's been building toward, which is 11 learning to be Jane Hopper, learning to be a person, not just a tool. So if not 11, who? Hopper's the dark horse candidate, and honestly, he terrifies me as a possibility. He already died once in Season 3. The entire emotional weight of that fake-out death, Joyce's grief, 11's devastation, all of that was incredibly powerful. Having him come back in Season 4 was this beautiful moment of hope and reunion. But what if that was setting up an actual permanent death this time? The impact would be devastating. Joyce finally has him back. 11 finally has a real father figure. And then he's taken away again, but this time for good. That would be absolutely gutting, and it's way more unexpected than 11 dying at this point. Hopper's whole arc in Season 5 has been about protecting his family. He's become this father to 11 and Will and Jonathan, this partner to Joyce. His ending could be the ultimate dad sacrifice, staying behind to make sure the gate closes, making sure his kids get out safely. David Harbour talked in interviews about wanting Hopper's happiest ending, but happy endings don't always mean survival. Sometimes the happiest ending is knowing you saved the people you love. Then there's Will, and this is the darkest theory I've got. What if Will's connection to Vecna can't be severed? What if the only way to truly kill Vecna is for Will to die too, like a Horcrux situation from Harry Potter? Will has been connected to Vecna since November 6th, 1983. The series started with Will vanishing. Having it end with Will's sacrifice would be this tragic full-circle moment that would destroy everyone emotionally. He just came out to his friends and family. He just found acceptance and love. He just started using his powers for good instead of being a victim. And then he has to give all of that up. Noah Schnapp's been really emotional in interviews about the ending, and if Will dies right after his coming out scene, that would explain why. It would be devastatingly sad, but also weirdly beautiful in a tragic way. Will saves everyone by being the one brave enough to let go. But I'm not sure Stranger Things would go that dark. It's always been hopeful at its core, even when things are terrifying. What if it's not just one person, though? What if the sacrifice is distributed? Multiple characters each give something up. 11 loses her powers permanently, but lives. Will severs his connection to Vecna, but loses his memories of the past 4 years. Hopper stays behind to seal the gate, but finds a way back eventually. Holly is changed forever by her experience. Max's recovery comes with permanent scars. Everyone pays a price, but everyone survives. That would fit the show's themes better, actually. Victory with cost. Growing up means losing innocence, losing the easy answers. But you gain something too. You gain wisdom, strength, the knowledge that you survived something impossible. There's also the possibility that the Duffers surprise us completely, and no one dies. At this point, the audience is so conditioned to expect major character deaths in finales that having everyone survive would be genuinely shocking. It would be the ultimate subversion of expectations. Imagine if the real twist is hope. Everyone makes it. The found family stays intact. They're changed, they're scarred, but they're together. That might be too optimistic, honestly, but it would be lovely. My actual prediction, if I'm being honest, is that Hopper makes the sacrifice play. He's ready to die to save everyone, to give Joyce and the kids their future. But Will saves him at the last second by using his connection to Vecna in some clever way we haven't thought of yet. Will severs the connection by choice, not by force, and that breaks Vecna's hold completely. Hopper survives. 11 keeps her powers, but they're different, changed. Max fully recovers. Holly gets back to her family. It's bittersweet but hopeful. Everyone survives, but childhood is over. That's the real sacrifice. Of course, there's still the question of what happens to Hawkins itself. Even if our favourite nerds defeat Vecna and save the kids, the town is in shambles. The rifts from the end of Season 4 are still tearing through Hawkins. There's this massive gate that Vecna opened, splitting the town apart. The military has placed the entire area under quarantine. The Upside Down is bleeding through into the real world in places, making parts of town uninhabitable. So the question becomes, can any of this be reversed, or is Hawkins permanently destroyed? One theory is complete destruction. Steve's plan involves destroying Dimension X with a bomb, which should theoretically collapse the wormhole. If the Upside Down is the wormhole itself, and you destroy one end of it, the whole thing should implode. That might seal the rifts in Hawkins, sucking all the upside-down corruption back through, and closing the gates permanently. The town would be saved, more or less, though probably with some dead zones where the rifts were worst. But what if it doesn't work that cleanly? What if destroying Dimension X actually makes things worse? The wormhole could collapse violently, and Hawkins could get pulled in partially, or the explosion could spread outward instead of inward. Parts of the town might be destroyed completely, swallowed into the void where the Upside Down used to be. The government would have to evacuate everyone, cordon off the area, maybe even nuke it to make sure nothing escapes. Hawkins becomes a forbidden zone, and all our characters have to scatter. That would be properly tragic. The town that's been the heart of the series for 9 years, just gone. Our characters lose their childhood home, literally, not just metaphorically. There's a middle ground, though. Maybe they stop the merge and seal the Upside Down, but the damage to Hawkins is permanent. The rifts close, but the areas where they were remain scarred. Dead zones where nothing grows, where the air feels wrong, where people get sick if they stay too long. Most families move away. The population drops by half. Hawkins becomes one of those dying towns in the Midwest, a shadow of what it was. The government would absolutely cover up what really happened. They've been doing it since Season 1. The official story would be an earthquake, or a chemical spill, or something equally mundane. Anyone who tries to tell the truth gets discredited. Our characters know what really happened, but the rest of the world never will. Then there's the time question, which honestly fascinates me. The Upside Down has been frozen on November 6th, 1983, since the moment 11 opened the first gate. That's the day Will disappeared, the day everything started. But why is it stuck on that specific date? Episode 6 explained that the Upside Down is a wormhole, and wormholes exist outside normal time, which could explain the freeze. But what happens when Vecna is defeated? Does time resume in the Upside Down? Does it collapse entirely? Does the freeze break and 4 years of decay happen all at once? The Duffers promised a big reveal about what the Upside Down really is. We got the wormhole explanation in episode 6, but I think there's more. My theory is that the Upside Down isn't natural. It's not some dimension that's always existed. Humans created it, probably accidentally, through Project Rainbow or some earlier experiment. It's a failed dimension, a mistake, and it's been festering ever since. Vecna didn't create it. He found it. The Mind Flayer didn't create it either. The Mind Flayer is the original inhabitant, something that was living in Dimension X and got access to our world when humans punched a hole through. We created our own nightmare, and Vecna just weaponized it. That would explain why the government has been so secretive and so invested in covering everything up. They know it's their fault. Brenner was trying to fix the mistake, or at least control it, but he made everything worse. It's a cycle of interference and catastrophe, and the only way to end it is to seal the breach permanently and never touch it again. If I had to predict Hawkins' actual fate, I'd say this: Dimension X gets destroyed. The Upside Down collapses back on itself. The rifts seal when the source is eliminated. But Hawkins is changed forever. Some areas never fully recover. The town is smaller, scarred, diminished. Many families have already moved away, and more leave after the finale. Our characters can't stay there because there are too many memories, too much trauma. The final scene probably shows them leaving Hawkins behind, moving forward with their lives. Growing up means leaving home, and sometimes home is destroyed in the process. It's sad, but it's also weirdly hopeful. They survived. They have a future. Hawkins was just a place. What mattered was the people, and the people are still here. Now let's talk about the actual character endings, because honestly, that's what Stranger Things has always been about. It's never been just about defeating the monster or closing the gate. It's about these people, these kids who grew up together and became a family. Starting with 11, her arc across the entire series has been about identity. Who is she without her powers? Who is she beyond being a weapon? In Season 1, she was basically just a tool that Brenner created. This girl with a number, instead of a name, who could barely speak. Season 2 was her learning to be human, discovering anger and friendship, and what it means to belong somewhere. Season 3 gave us that brilliant "I'm going to my friends" moment, where she chooses her found family over everything else. Season 4 was about recovering her lost powers and understanding her past. And Season 5 is her finally mastering those powers and using them on her own terms. The question for the finale is whether 11's ending is defined by her powers or by who she is as a person. I think the answer has to be the latter. She keeps her powers, probably, but they don't define her anymore. She's Jane Hopper. She has a family in Hopper, Joyce, Will and Jonathan. She has friends in the party. She has a boyfriend in Mike. Though honestly, I think their relationship evolves into something more mature and less codependent. Millie Bobby Brown talked about 11 being locked in with a mission, which suggests a confident, purposeful ending. 11 knows who she is now. She's not questioning herself anymore. She saves everyone because that's what she chooses to do, not because it's what she was made for. And then she gets to live. She gets to have a normal teenage life, or as normal as possible after everything. That's the victory. Will's ending is the one I'm most invested in, honestly. He suffered more than anyone. Vanished, possessed, traumatized, pining after his best friend, connected to the villain for 4 years. Season 5 has finally given him agency and power. The sorcerer nickname, which he rejected earlier, actually fits now. He's not just wise because of what he's been through. He's actively using his connection to Vecna as a weapon. The coming out scene in episode 7 was massive. Will told everyone he doesn't like girls, and he explained that Vecna showed him a future where coming out leads to everyone drifting away. That's his deepest fear, that being himself costs him his family. But the group's response was perfect. They love him. Nothing changes. He's always been one of them. Noah Schnapp said the arc isn't just about being gay. It's about the identity crisis that everyone faces. The fear that if people really knew you, they wouldn't accept you. Will's ending has to address that fear and prove it wrong. He severs his connection to Vecna, probably through some heroic choice rather than a forced sacrifice, and he loses the now memories and the constant presence in his head. For the first time since 1983, he's completely free. No more spy, no more connection, no more Vecna. And he gets to just be Will. an openly gay teenager with a family who loves him, and friends who accept him completely. That's what he deserves, after everything. Mike's arc is about reclaiming his leadership. The Duffers said he becomes the leader again, but in a more confident and mature way than Season 1. In the early seasons, Mike was the heart of the group, the one who brought everyone together and made the plans. But in Seasons 2 through 4, he sort of floundered. He became so focused on Eleven and protecting her that he lost himself a bit. Season 5 brings him back. My prediction is that Mike orchestrates the final plan, bringing together all the different elements and all the different people. It's his strategy that wins the day, his ability to see how everyone's strengths fit together. He's not just Eleven's boyfriend anymore. He's the leader of the party, the glue that holds them together. His relationship with Eleven probably evolves too. They're not codependent anymore. They're two strong people who choose to be together, not two broken people who need each other to function. That's growth. Lucas and Max have the most fully realised romance in the show, and their ending needs to honour that. Max has been in a coma for most of Season 5, her consciousness trapped in Vecna's mind while Lucas stayed by her side. When she wakes up in Episode 7, their reunion is everything. Sadie Sink and Caleb McLaughlin absolutely destroyed that scene emotionally. The reveal that it was never about Kate Bush's song specifically, but about the connection to everything Max loved to Lucas. That's beautiful. Love literally saved her. Not magic, not music, just the fact that someone cared about her enough to never give up. My prediction is that Max fully recovers. She has to deal with trauma, obviously. Being trapped in Vecna's mind for weeks or months leaves scars, but Lucas is there to support her, and she learns to accept help instead of pushing people away. That's been her struggle since Season 2, learning to let people in after her brother died. Her ending is about healing, about letting herself be loved. Lucas's arc completes too. He's been torn between being himself and fitting in, the basketball team versus Hellfire Club, popularity versus authenticity. By the end, he's comfortable being a nerd. He doesn't need to choose. He can be an athlete and a D&D player. He can be popular and still be himself. And he's with Max, supporting her, loving her, being the steady presence she needs. Dustin's role in the finale is probably more about his brain than his brawn. He's the one who figured out the wormhole mechanics in Episode 6. His explanations of the science help everyone understand what they're up against. But he's also the emotional centre of the group in a lot of ways. He keeps everyone grounded with his humour and his optimism. He lost Eddie Munson in Season 4, and he's been processing that grief all through Season 5. Eddie was this mentor figure, this older brother type, and Dustin's ending probably involves honouring Eddie's memory somehow. Maybe he goes to college and studies science, becomes a teacher eventually. Maybe he makes sure the party stays connected, organising reunions and making sure they never drift apart. That feels very Dustin. Joe Keery mentioned everyone felt fatigue after filming for a year, but the material was incredible. That suggests the finale gives everyone proper closure, even the characters who aren't front and centre. The main kids' endings have to be bittersweet but hopeful. They survive, they win, but childhood is over. They're going to scatter eventually, go to different colleges, pursue different lives. But the bond they formed, the family they built, that's forever. That's what Stranger Things has always been about. The adult characters deserve their happy endings too, honestly. They've been through just as much as the kids in their own ways. Hopper and Joyce have been dancing around each other for literally the entire series. They've both lost so much. Hopper lost his daughter Sarah to cancer, which destroyed him and his marriage. Joyce lost Bob Newby in Season 2, watching him get torn apart by demodogs. Then Hopper died in Season 3, which devastated Joyce all over again. Season 4 was Joyce's desperate mission to rescue Hopper from a Soviet prison, and she succeeded. They're finally together now, finally have a chance at happiness. They deserve peace, After everything, they deserve to just be happy. My prediction is that both of them survive the finale. They get their ending together. Maybe they leave Hawkins, start over somewhere safe where they can raise Elle, Will, and Jonathan without constant supernatural threats. A blended family that actually works. David Harbour talked in interviews about wanting Hopper's happiest ending, and I think that means being with Joyce and being a proper father to Eleven and the boys. He spent so long being broken and alone. His ending should be about family and healing, not more tragedy. The bittersweet part is that they can't forget what happened. The scars remain, but they're moving forward together, and that's what matters. Now the Steve and Nancy and Jonathan love triangle. This has been going on since season 1, and honestly, it needs resolution. Steve has matured so much over the series. He went from being this popular jock bully to becoming the group's babysitter and protector. He genuinely cares about these kids. He's brave, he's loyal, and he's grown into this really good person. Nancy has been torn between her past with Steve and her present with Jonathan. Steve represents who she was in high school. That version of herself she's moved beyond. Jonathan represents the person she became after everything started. Someone who understands trauma and loss. But in season 5, she and Jonathan have been struggling. Their relationship reaches a turning point in episode 6 when they're trapped in the melting lab room and believe they might die. Jonathan makes what he calls an unproposal, asking Nancy if she will not marry him. They reconcile as friends, finally being honest with each other about everything from her hatred of the Clash to the fact that he never actually applied to Emerson. Here's my prediction. Nancy chooses herself. Not Steve, not Jonathan, but her own future. She wants to be a journalist, to expose the truth about what happened in Hawkins. That's her calling. Both guys respect that choice because they've both grown enough to understand that Nancy doesn't need to be defined by which boy she ends up with. Steve's ending is about the found family he's built with the kids. He doesn't need a romantic relationship to be fulfilled. He's got Dustin, he's got Robin, he's got this entire group of people who love him. His purpose is protecting them, and he's bloody good at it. That's enough. Jonathan's ending probably involves staying close to his family, supporting Will and Joyce, maybe pursuing photography professionally. He's always been the quiet, supportive one, and that doesn't change. Robin and Vicky get their happy queer ending, please. Robin came out in season 3, and getting to have an actual girlfriend in season 5 has been lovely. Vicky helped during the hospital fight in episode 5, and she stays above ground for the finale to provide support. Both of them survive. Both of them get to be together. The representation of Will and Robin as queer characters matters loads to people. Having them both survive and get to be openly themselves, with people who love and accept them, that's important. Stranger Things isn't perfect with representation, but giving these characters hopeful endings would mean something. Erica's been brilliant this season. She's the youngest person getting properly involved, and she's using her brain rather than just her sass. The telemetry project with Mr. Clark shows she's genuinely smart, possibly smarter than Dustin, even though she'd never admit it. My prediction is that she's inspired by everything that's happened and becomes a scientist when she's older, maybe even surpasses Dustin eventually. She leaves Hawkins for some advanced program and has this bright future ahead of her. Holly's ending is the one that worries me most. She's been kidnapped, manipulated, tortured, thrown downstairs by other children, dropped from the sky. She's got a head injury. She's been through absolute hell and she's, 9 years old? That kind of trauma doesn't just go away. Nancy has to save her. That's non-negotiable. Nancy's whole arc this season has been about protecting her sister, and the finale needs to deliver on that. Holly gets rescued, she's reunited with her family, and Karen Wheeler becomes the protective mother she should have been all along. But Holly's changed. You can't go through what she went through and come out the same. She might become obsessed with understanding what happened to her, researching the supernatural when she's older, or she might want to forget entirely, block it all out. Either way, the Wheeler family is closer after this. Karen redeems her previous neglect by being there for Holly in the aftermath. Murray finally gets vindicated. He's been this conspiracy theorist who everyone dismissed as crazy, but he was right about everything. The government cover-ups, the experiments, the supernatural threats, all of it. In the finale, he helps with the infiltration and probably survives. Whether he writes a book that no one believes or stays quiet and helps the heroes secretly, he's proven right. That's his victory. Kaylee's return has been one of the best parts of Season 5. She disappeared after Season 2, and loads of people thought she was just written off. But she's back. Her powers are crucial to the plan, and her relationship with Eleven gets to deepen properly. They're sisters, not by blood, but by shared trauma, and Brenner's experiments. My prediction is that Carly survives and stays around afterwards. She and Eleven build a real relationship, support each other, help each other heal. The found family expands to include her. The adult and supporting characters all get closure. They all survive, probably, because the show's already dark enough without killing off the parents and side characters. Their endings are about healing, moving forward, and building new lives after surviving the impossible. What's the actual final scene of Stranger Things going to be? Like the very last shot before the credits roll? This is what I've been thinking about constantly, because the final scene of a series this massive has to be perfect. It has to bring everything full circle, give us closure, but also leave us with something to think about. The series started on November 6th, 1983, with Will Byers riding his bike home from a D&D campaign and vanishing into the Upside Down. It's ending on November 6th, 1987, exactly 4 years later. That's such a specific, deliberate choice. So the question is whether the finale ends on that same day, or if we get a time jump to see what happens after. One option is that it ends the same day, probably that evening. The battle's over, Vecna's defeated, Dimension X is destroyed, and everyone's just sitting together somewhere, maybe at Hopper's cabin or what's left of it. They're exhausted, traumatized, some of them injured, but they're alive. There's this silent acknowledgement between them, like they don't need to say anything, because they all understand what they just survived together. The camera pulls back slowly, showing the group, then pulls back further to show Hawkins in the background. The town's damaged, but standing. And then it fades to black. Simple, emotional, immediate. But that might be too abrupt, honestly. After 9 years, we might need something more. The second option is a time jump to a few weeks later, maybe December 1987, around Christmas. This is actually my favourite idea. We see the party gathering for a holiday meal, everyone there, sharing food and stories. It's at Hopper and Joyce's place, probably, because they're the de facto parents now. There's laughter, there's warmth, and it feels like normalcy is returning. But then there's a quiet moment where someone looks at something, maybe a photo or an empty chair if someone died, and you see the weight of what happened. They survived, but they're changed. The scars are there, even if they're healing. The final shot could be a group photo, like a new version of the one from Season 1. Everyone together, older now, different but still a family. That would properly destroy me emotionally. There's also the possibility of a longer time jump, to the 1990s maybe. The party's in college or working, and they're reuniting in Hawkins or somewhere else. We'd see them as proper adults, and maybe there are even cameos from the adult actors just for fun. They're reminiscing about their adventure, telling the story to someone new, or just looking at old photos together. The final shot is them looking at a picture of their younger selves, and someone says, "Remember when?" and it fades to black on that nostalgia, bittersweet, reflective, showing that the found family persisted even as they grew up. Then there's the ambiguous ending, which would be very Duffer Brothers. They win, Vecna's dead, everyone celebrates. But the final shot cuts to somewhere in the Upside Down, and we see something moving in the shadows. The Mind Flayer is still there, weakened, maybe dormant, but alive. It doesn't attack anyone, It just watches and waits. That sets up the idea that the threat could return someday, leaving the door open for potential spin-offs, but also confirming that our heroes are safe for now. Nothing's ever truly permanent, but the victory was real. What I actually think they're going to do is something that mirrors the opening of Season 1. The series started with Will biking home and getting chased by a demogorgon. What if it ends with Will biking down that same road, same time of day, but everything's different? He's older, stronger, free of Vecna's connection, and his friends are riding with him this time. All of them together, bikes disappearing into the sunset or the gathering darkness, heading toward whatever comes next. Childhood's ending, but the friendship is forever. My actual prediction for the final scene is a combination of all these ideas. Victory on November 6th, a brief moment of relief and exhaustion. Then we get a time jump to spring, 1988, a few months later. The party's at Hopper's cabin having dinner. Everyone's there. Joyce and Hopper are together, cooking. The kids are around the table, sharing stories and laughing. It feels warm and safe and like home. The camera focuses on 11 at some point, and she's just watching everyone, taking it all in. She smiles, this genuine smile of pure happiness. Maybe for the first time in the entire series. She's at peace. She's home. She's not a weapon or a number. She's Jane, and she's surrounded by family. Then we pull back to show the whole group, everyone together, alive and safe. The final line is probably something simple, but meaningful. Maybe Mike says, "We made it," or 11 says, "Friends don't lie," or Will says something about being free. A callback to the beginning that confirms how far they've come. Cut to outside the cabin. It's in the forest, warm light glowing from the windows, laughter audible from inside. The camera pulls further back, showing Hawkins in the distance. The town's still there, changed but surviving. Then we tilt up to the starry sky above. The same sky that was there at the beginning. Full circle. Fade to black. Credits roll over an 80s song. Probably something hopeful. Heroes by David Bowie would be perfect, but that might be too obvious. More likely, it's the original score by Kyle Dixon and Michael Stein. Something emotional and nostalgic and absolutely perfect that makes you cry even though you're happy. That's how I think it ends. Before we wrap up the theories, I want to talk about the whole process of theorizing for a second, because I think it's worth acknowledging. Everything I've just laid out, all those predictions about Vecna's death and character sacrifices and the final scene, could be completely wrong. The Duffer Brothers might have something totally different planned that I haven't even considered. And honestly, that's kind of exciting. The thing about Stranger Things is that Matt and Ross Duffer have a track record of surprising us. Season 1, nobody expected 11 to survive. Season 2, Will's possession came out of nowhere for most viewers. Season 3, Hopper's death absolutely destroyed everyone, even though it turned out to be temporary. Season 4 had the Vecna reveal and Max's fate, both of which were properly shocking. They're good at this. They know how to set expectations and then subvert them in ways that still feel earned. So while I've spent the last, however long, theorizing about every possible outcome, there's a very real chance the finale does something I haven't predicted at all, and I'm genuinely okay with that. Part of the fun of watching a show like this is being surprised, having your expectations challenged, seeing something you didn't see coming. What we actually know for certain is really limited. The episode's called The Right Side Up. It's feature length. It takes place on November 6th, 1987. It's going to wrap up all the storylines and give us an emotional ending. That's genuinely it. Everything else is educated guesswork based on setup and patterns and interviews, but it's still just guessing. The fun part, though, is the speculation itself. The theorizing is half the experience of being in a fan community. We've been discussing and debating and imagining together, building theories, sharing ideas, getting excited about possibilities. That's been happening for months now, all through the wait between seasons and between volumes. It makes the experience richer, more communal. Even if my theories are completely wrong, the process of thinking through them has been enjoyable. And tomorrow, when the finale actually airs, we'll finally know. By this time tomorrow, the entire story will be complete. We'll have our answers. Stranger Things, the show that's been running since 2016, will be finished. That's weird to think about, honestly. After 9 years of theories and discussions and rewatches, it's all ending tomorrow night. Bittersweet doesn't even cover it. But wherever the story actually goes, whatever the Duffers have planned, I trust them to stick the landing. They've earned that trust over 5 seasons. It's been one hell of a ride. Before we get to the very end, I want to share some fun facts and Easter eggs from Volume 2 that you might have missed, because there are loads of little details that make these episodes even better when you notice them. The episode titles themselves are packed with meaning. Shock Jock obviously references radio hosts, but it's also describing Will's powers, his ability to shock Vecna through their connection. Escape from Camazotz comes from A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Ongle, where Camazotz is this planet where everyone's mind is controlled by an evil force called IT. It's a perfect metaphor for Vecna's mental prison. And the bridge has multiple meanings. It's the bridge between dimensions, the bridge between childhood and adulthood, and Will himself is a bridge between the group and Vecna. The music choices in Volume 2 are brilliant. Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill returns, but with a twist. The show subverts what it established in Season 4. Back then, it seemed like the song itself had magical properties, but Episode 6 reveals it was never about the music. It was about the emotional connection the song represented, Max's link to Lucas, and everything she loved. That's actually a really clever way to deepen the Season 4 moment rather than just repeating it. Kyle Dixon and Michael Stein's synthesizer score continues to be absolutely perfect. The way they blend 80s aesthetics with modern production techniques creates this sound that's nostalgic, but also timeless. Some of the themes in Volume 2, especially during the emotional scenes, are properly beautiful. There are visual callbacks everywhere if you're looking for them. The hospital laundry scene with the Demodogs hunting Lucas and the others is shot almost exactly like the Velociraptor kitchen scene from Jurassic Park. You've got the creatures sniffing around, getting closer, while the humans try to stay silent and hidden. It's a direct homage, and it works perfectly. Holly trapped in the vines is a visual callback to Will in Season 1. Same location, same sticky tendrils, same desperate escape attempt. It's showing that Holly's now in the exact position Will was in all those years ago, which makes Nancy's motivation to save her even stronger. The Creel House dining table scene at the end of Episode 7 is framed like the Last Supper. You've got 12 children plus Vecna, 13 figures total, sitting around a table for what's essentially a final meal before the apocalypse. The religious imagery is deliberate and really unsettling. The first shadow play connections are woven throughout Volume 2. That memory of young Henry in Rachel, Nevada, killing the scientist with the glowing briefcase, that's directly from the play's backstory. Project Rainbow, the technology that gave Henry his powers, is explained in the stage show. You don't need to have seen the play to understand Season 5, but it definitely enhances things if you know the lore. Fun fact about the performances: critics have been raving about Sadie Sink and Caleb McLaughlin in the Max and Lucas reunion scene. It's being called the strongest acting in the entire season. There's barely any dialogue at first, it's just pure emotion, two people who've been through hell finally getting a moment of relief. Apparently, the entire crew was crying while filming it. Noah Schnapp's coming out scene was similarly emotional to film. Cast members have said everyone was in tears, both the actors in the scene and the people behind the camera. It's one of those moments that transcends the show and becomes genuinely meaningful for people watching. Karen Wheeler finally getting an action scene is something Cara Buono, the actress, has apparently wanted for ages. She's been a background character for most of the series, and suddenly she's fighting Demodogs in a hospital, and actually winning. Mums can be properly badass when their town and their kids are threatened. The D&D references continue to be perfect. Will the sorcerer fits the D&D class system beautifully. Sorcerers have innate magical abilities that they're born with, as opposed to wizards who study and learn magic. Will didn't choose his powers or learn them. He was born with a connection to Vecna, which makes sorcerer the perfect classification. Holly's D&D token, Holly the Heroic, becomes this symbolic representation of her true self. It's not just a toy, it's an anchor to her real identity underneath all of Vecna's manipulation. That's very Dungeons and Dragons, using a character sheet or a miniature to represent who you really are. The demo vision shots, the first-person perspective from a Demogorgon's point of view, are a new filming technique the Duffers tried for Season 5. They've confirmed this in interviews. It's a really cool way to make the creatures feel more present and threatening. Behind-the-scenes details are fascinating too. Filming wrapped on December 20th, 2024, and apparently the very last shot recorded on set was of a lunchbox with no cast members in it. It's symbolic of childhood ending, all these kids who brought lunchboxes to set for years. And now it's over. The Duffers structured the shooting schedule so that every actor's last day on set was actually their character's last scene in the story. That must have been incredibly emotional. Joe Keery mentioned that everyone felt fatigue after filming for a year straight, but the material was incredible, which suggests the finale delivers properly. Post-production has apparently been ahead of schedule, according to updates from the Duffers in January 2025. The visual effects teams have been working on this for months, and everything's on track for the December 31st release. Random, cool details I love. The hospital is Hawkins Memorial, the same hospital that's been in the show since Season 1. The radio tower that Steve and Jonathan climbed in Episode 1 pays off in Episode 7's plan, which is brilliant foreshadowing. The Hawkins lab exists in both dimensions, the real world and the upside down, but the upside down version is decaying and overgrown, frozen in time like everything else in that realm. The military gate designation, MAC-SEED, suggests there are other classified gates that we haven't seen. How many gates has the government been monitoring? What else are they hiding? Those questions probably won't get answered, but they're fun to think about. There's probably loads more Easter eggs I'm missing, honestly. The Duffers pack so much detail into every frame that you could watch these episodes multiple times and keep finding new things. Before we say goodbye to this video, I think it's worth taking a moment to talk about what Stranger Things actually meant, beyond just the plots and the monsters and the theories. Stranger Things premiered on July 15th, 2016, which feels like a lifetime ago now. Netflix was a very different company back then. Binge watching was still a relatively new concept. Streaming services were just starting to compete with traditional television. And then this little show about a missing kid and a girl with superpowers dropped, and it absolutely changed the game. It made Netflix a real competitor to major networks and studios. It proved that streaming services could create event television, shows that everyone watched and talked about simultaneously, despite the binge model. Stranger Things became a cultural phenomenon in a way that very few shows manage. The 80s nostalgia wave that followed was massive. Suddenly everyone was wearing retro clothes, listening to synth music, referencing the Spielberg films and Stephen King novels that inspired the show. Every network and streaming service tried to replicate that aesthetic, that feeling. But Stranger Things did it first and did it best because the Duffer Brothers had authentic love for the era. It wasn't just a visual style. They understood the tone, the warmth, the sense of adventure that defined 80s family entertainment. The Amblin Entertainment influence is clear in every frame. Stranger Things is basically Stand By Me meets E.T. meets The Goonies with a horror twist. It's got that same DNA, that belief that kids can be heroes, and that friendship is the most powerful force in the universe. What really made Stranger Things special, though, was the found family theme. At its core, this show has always been about misfits finding each other and choosing to be family. It's not about blood relations. 11 isn't related to Hopper or Joyce or the boys, but they're her family. The party isn't bound by anything except their choice to stick together. That theme resonated deeply with audiences, especially LGBTQ+ viewers, who often have to build their own families when their biological ones don't accept them. Will and Robin's representation mattered. It's not perfect representation, and the show's been criticised for how long it took Will to come out. But having these characters exist and be accepted and loved by their found families means something to people. Seeing Will come out in episode 7 and immediately be embraced, seeing Robin have a girlfriend and be happy, that gives hope to viewers who might be struggling with their own identities. We've literally watched the cast grow up over 9 years. Millie Bobby Brown was 12 when she started, and now she's 21. Finn Wolfhard went from 13 to 22. Noah Schnapp from 11 to 20. These aren't just actors playing roles. We've watched them age in real time, which creates this weird parasocial connection. The audience grew up with them. Fans who started watching as kids are adults now. There's this parallel journey happening. The show's genre blending shouldn't work on paper. It's horror, science fiction, coming-of-age drama, mystery, government conspiracy thriller, and comedy all at once. That should be a mess. But the Duffer Brothers made it work seamlessly. They proved you could have terrifying demogorgons and heartfelt character moments in the same episode, often in the same scene. Stranger Things influenced loads of shows that came after it. The formula of kids facing supernatural threats while adults are oblivious, the 80s aesthetic, the found family dynamics, the synth-heavy scores. It's everywhere now. But there's something special about the original that the imitators can't quite capture, and we're at the end of an era. 9 years is a proper long time for a show to run. The television landscape has completely changed since 2016. Netflix has hundreds of shows now. Everyone's watching different things. It's harder to have those true shared cultural moments where everyone's watching the same show and discussing it together. Stranger Things is one of the last examples of that kind of event television. When Volume 1 dropped in November, everyone watched it. Everyone theorised. Everyone waited for Volume 2 together. And tomorrow, everyone's going to watch the finale simultaneously. That's increasingly rare in our fragmented media landscape. For me personally, Stranger Things has been a comfort show. I've been watching since 2016, and it's been there during hard times, during good times, as this constant presence. The characters feel like friends at this point, which sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud, but that's what good storytelling does. It makes you care deeply about people who don't exist. I'm excited for the finale, but I'm also sad that it's ending. I want closure for these characters. I want to know how their stories end, but I also don't want to say goodbye to this world that's been part of my life for 9 years. And that's what makes this finale so important. It's not just about defeating Vecna or saving Hawkins. It's about giving us a proper ending to something we've all invested in emotionally. So we've covered Volume 2, broken down episodes 5, 6 and 7 in detail, explored all the major revelations about the Upside Down and Vecna's plan, theorised about how the finale's going to play out, discussed potential character deaths and sacrifices, predicted what happens to Hawkins and how the series might end, and taken a trip down memory lane about what this show has meant over the past 9 years. Tomorrow night, December. Were my theories right? Completely wrong? Did the Duffers surprise us all? I'll definitely be doing a full finale breakdown and analysis video once I've actually seen it and can talk about what really happened instead of just guessing. I might also do a full series retrospective at some point, looking back at all 5 seasons and how the story evolved, and if there are any spin-off announcements or related Stranger Things content, I'll cover that too. This universe isn't ending, even if the main show is. If you're not already subscribed, hit that button down below. It helps the channel loads and it means you'll get notified when the finale breakdown drops. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Share it with other Stranger Things fans who are desperately theorizing about tomorrow night. And most importantly, enjoy the finale. However it ends, whatever happens, we've been on this journey together. Tomorrow's the end, but it's also a celebration of everything this show has been. Until next time, stay safe and sweet dreams.